Here is our Mk2 Golf 16 valve GTI. It looks great from the outside, but it does need some work. So in this video, I'm going to tell you about what needs doing and what the plans are for the future. You may have seen this car in the background whilst we have been doing the engine on our R32 Mk2 Golf. It looks great from the outside. That is definitely its best feature. However, that is only skin deep, I'm afraid, the beauty on this. There are quite a few problems, so let's go through them. Problem number one, this window. It basically doesn't seat quite right. You have a gap running through there, water gets in into my noughts and crosses in the window. So yeah, that means the door cards quickly get wrecked. Need to sort that out. I have had the door card off in this car before and it has been bodged together with a piece of wood, and yeah, I don't really know how they've done that. At the time I wasn't very confident in what I needed to do, but since having done the R32 I've actually gained a lot of confidence in working on cars, so I'm going to tackle this one. Another trademark fault that this Golf has got, which so many others seem to have, is this. That's quite irritating. You have to really give it some to get it to close. So I think I need to do some door alignment to sort that out. This car has got the quite rare Le Castellet forged alloy wheels. From factory, it would have had the Montreal bottle tops, but as it actually came with these wheels when we found it, we've decided to keep them. The thing is, they are a bit rough. They are very, very curved around the edge. They do clean up okay, but they could just do with a refurbishment, let's be honest. They will polish up to a point, but I think a refurb will be the best bet for these. This car is Tornado Red. It is a non-lacquered colour, and because it's a non-lacquered cellulose paint, it fades badly. So this car, unfortunately, has been out in the sun all summer because we've been doing the work on the black one in the garage. This is normally kept in the garage, therefore it's gone pink. We're going to have to cut that right back and bring the vibrant red back up to scratch. Now GTIs came with quite a bit of vinyl on the cars, you know, vinyl livery. So a swage line which ran all the way around the side and round the back of the car. Unfortunately, someone took it off at some point in its life. We've always been in two minds whether to keep it like it is or to refit it. And the other thing is, this rear tailgate decal is not in the best condition. We have bits that are flaked off. Not quite sure how that's happened, but if you do jet wash it, it doesn't make it any better. So this needs replacing. Before this car was parked outside in the sun, it had a perfect headlining. Unfortunately, we've had the hottest summer on record in this country. The glue in the headlining just melts because it's 30 plus years old. What is it now? 34 years old. It melted. The headlining has sagged. A very, very common and irritating Mk2 problem. When I have been driving this car, whether that be to work or to shows or anything like that, and it has then decided to lash it down with rain, you sometimes find yourself with a lovely trickle of water dripping down the back of your neck, which is horrendously unpleasant. But that means that the sunroof is leaking from somewhere, and that has also probably caused a premature failure of the headlining as well, because it will have just caused water onto the glue. As I say, it's 34 years old, and that will have caused that to fail as well, along with the heat that we had from this summer. Actually still wet after the snow eventually thawed. Yeah, you can see all the water in here. And as a result, I didn't realise that this car is not particularly watertight. Yeah, I think if we had a cold enough snap that would freeze on the inside of the windscreen. Back like when my parents used to say, oh, when I was a kid, I used to have to scrape the ice off the inside of the windscreen. Turns out you might have to do that on this as well. The passenger footwell, we have a rather wet, soggy mat. So water is getting in from under here, probably under the heater, from in the heater box, or it might be a blocked drain tube or something like that. Unfortunately, the driver's seat has got a bit of a tear in it. Also got a strange stain there. It's like it's permanent marker, because that will not come off at all. But the actual bolsters are in good order. So fingers crossed we can get away with just new material and a retrim rather than having to fit entirely new bolsters. One very common thing that does occur on GTIs, 16 valves I think in particular, is you get a second gear crunch. This car, unfortunately, when it is cold, does have that. So that is part of the synchro, is at fault. It was most likely ragged from cold when it was a newish car, so the gearbox oil wouldn't have warmed up properly. And yeah, just mashed into second gear from first really, and that will have not done it any good really. So when you do change it from first into second, it makes a bit of a clunking noise, and it doesn't really inspire you with confidence, and it sort of ruins the driving experience. So that's another thing to sort out. Another thing this car has got is a dent here. You can just about see it at that angle. Hopefully a paintless dent removal guy should be able to remove that. February 2011 was when we found this car, but I can't take credit for that. That would be you.
It would be me. So yeah, back in February 2011, we walked away with this 16 valve Golf GTI. I came across it when I was on patrol at work doing farm watch visits, and I got speaking to a guy who fits aircon to older cars. We got chatting about how I've got a black GL, and in the summer with the leather interior, it's pretty hot. And I hate it, and it's as awful in winter with it being cold and oh, it's just horrible, but it looks good. And I said, oh, well, I'd love aircon in the black Mark II, but realistically I can't really have it. And he went, oh, funny you should say that, I've got a Mark II. My ears pricked. So after a cup of tea and some convincing, I managed to get him to show me the Mark II that was out the back of his unit, and well, I fell in love. So out the back of his unit was literally a pine forest, and it had shed all of the pine leaves all over all the cars that were out the back of his unit. And right in the middle was this very green, pink Mark II Golf. And I did a tour of it, looked around, saw there was a lot of damage to the back of it. He explained how a vehicle had ploughed into the back of it when it was parked on the road. Him and his brother owned it, and it's just been off the road ever since. They've never got round to fixing it because of the nature of their business, fixing everybody else's cars. I wasn't 100% sure on what it was at first, and it wasn't until the passenger door was open, open a little bit, that I pulled it open and I saw the 16 valve decal on the glove box, and I thought, no, it's not, is it? And then I saw the red pinstripe GTI seats. I saw everything else that makes it a 16 valve, and I thought, I've got to have this car. I've really, really got to have it. I popped the hood, saw that 16 valve engine, and I needed to have this car, but he didn't want to part with it. At the time we were looking for a 16 valve project car. They were becoming a bit hard to find back then, so we struck gold. So at the time I had one of those flip phones where you could only just about send picture messages, and I remember sending 3 or 4 of them to Ali in the middle of nowhere, trying to get signal to say, look what I found, I've got to have it. And then him calling me on his lunch break to say, what on earth have you found, and explaining the whole thing to him, and him saying, yeah, I've got to see this car. And then when he'd finished work, we arranged with the guy to all come and see the Mark II again and see if he would negotiate with us to have this 16 valve. And yeah, he said he'd been approached by somebody else that had offered him 500 quid, and he was considering it. Didn't want a penny less. And I think my enthusiasm for the Mark II is what made me the owner of this car today, because after some haggling and paying what we did for it, I walked away with it the next day. The very next day we had it put on the back of a low loader, and it was brought home, and the rest is history.
Now, I wanted to talk about some of the positives of this car, because there are a lot, let's be honest. It's not all negatives. Now, aside from the engine being a strong point on this car, the bodywork is pretty good. Every panel, apart from that front wing, is basically spotless. There's hardly a ding or scratch really on it. It is original paint as well, so it does come up really, really well when it's been polished. So I actually can't wait to do that again when the weather is a little bit better. I won't really like it in this weather too much. So that is one of the best things about this car, is the bodywork, really. Considering the environment that this car was in when we found it, under those fern trees with the grass growing underneath it, it's basically immaculate underneath. I've not seen one that hasn't been restored in as good a condition as this, so that is its main redeeming feature, I'd say. Bodywork is great. The fact that there's no rust on top just is, yeah, a real bonus. So that's something we're very thankful of. Here we have an original 1.8 16 valve. So this is the original engine. It is the KR engine code. It's got the braided style fuel lines, and it has got the hedgehog style air intake, which goes on top of the metering head. Mechanically, this is a great engine. It is strong, it's got no horrible knocks or bangs or anything like that, and it pulls really, really well. I reckon it's probably pushing near to the 139 brake horsepower which these came with from factory. It hasn't been on a rolling road, so that would be a nice thing to do, but it has been professionally set up at a tuning company to get the best out of the K-Jet system, because that is quite a complicated system to get right. As I say, the one letdown on this is the gearbox. There is that second gear crunch, so that is something we are going to have to sort out at some point in the future. But now, having done the one on the R32, that's something I'm pretty confident in being able to do. The engine being strong, it also has a track slag 2.25 inch race exhaust system. They call it a race system because that is what they were using on the production GTI cars, but it isn't actually loud at all. It's very, very civilized. It just burbles away quite nicely, and then when you do put your foot down, it lets you know it's there. Perfect. Now, when we've attended shows in the past, we've been renowned for having what has been affectionately named as a sympathy board plonked outside the car. What we used to actually do was use it to prop up the bumper before we actually had it fixed permanently, because the bumper used to drop off down there. So that used to be sat just there, and it used to have a load of pictures in front of the car of how it used to look to how it is now. So cheers, Bobby, for naming that. It's stuck with us and we use it still. So this car is quite low mileage really. It only has 130,000 miles, which is backed up by the MOT and service history, which this car does have in abundance. So that is quite a good thing. So not only is this a low mileage car, it also only has 3 previous keepers. So we are the 4th owners, so that's pretty good as well. This is why we decided to keep this car rather than then just do it up and flog it, which was the temptation at the time, and actually the original intention. It was originally registered up in York, and it was kept by that owner for about 3 years before then moving on to the next owner who had it for quite some time. At one point in this car's life, we went a little bit mad and we stuck on some BBS RS 070 wheels on it. They are effectively the same as the 001s, which are the like super desirable ones, because what we'd done is we'd put the Radinox 1.5 inch lips on. So that actually brought them to the same fitment and same offset and same design and everything like that as the 001s. Unfortunately, it completely trashed the ride, so they came off pretty quickly after having won a couple of shows. This car is lowered by 40mm on some Spax PSX suspension, so it's the full suspension kit, and it actually, on these wheels with the Castellets, it drives really, really well. It's, you know, really purposeful. Got enough softness to be quite pliant, but God, these BBS wheels absolutely ruined it. It was just so firm, and it skipped over bumps and everything like that, and it just did not inspire you with any confidence. And just to top it off, it scrubbed ever so slightly on the rear, and I wasn't going to have that. So they came off and they went towards a deposit on a house. Happy days. So the moral of the story really is, if you do have an old car, don't leave it parked outside for months on end without driving it. They don't like it. You will get leaks, you'll end up with mould and condensation and water on the inside of the car, it is not a nice place to be now. So plenty of work to be getting on with. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you next time where we will be taking out the R32 on its first drive. I cannot wait. See you soon. Huh.